Hello, this is I Go Travel with Dawn Barnett. We're near the coast here now, and she rains most of the time here. So I've got to wear my old sou'wester hat from Newfoundland. You know, it goes down the back here, runs right down your raincoat. And so we're into rain country now. My cameraman wants to say something. Oh, what's that you say? Have I seen any bears? Well, once in a while, we're in bear country. There's bears all over British Columbia. But up in the north, the further north, in the more out of the urban areas, the few more bears you're going to see. I've seen some. What? What's that? Do I know any bear stories? Well, I know some. I can tell you some in this video. I guess if there's time. No, not now. If I tell you a bear story now, you won't listen to all of the video. And who knows, you might learn something in this video. There's lots of room in your head for a lot more learning. So watch the video, and at the end, then I'll tell you a bear story. In this video, we are going to take a look at Prince Rupert, mainly. But we're going to also look at Kitimat, and those are the two communities that we'll spend all of our time on. If you looked at part one of these videos that I made, we came down from Dawson Creek in that part one video, down to the Yellowhead Highway, number 16 here, and came west on it, and we ended that video right about this red circle, which was that volcano that killed all of those people. So in this video, we'll jump back in the camper and get back to the Yellowhead, and the first thing we'll do is go run down the coast here to the community of Kitimat and see what's there. At Kitimat, we camped here at this place overlooking the ice-free deep sea port. The highway here from the Yellowhead was in a wide forest-free corridor that had lots of room to run anything like pipelines or transmission lines or multi-line highways for that matter. The company that now owns the plant here and makes aluminum is called Rio Tinto. It's an Australian international corporation that bought the original Canadian company in 2007. The original Canadian company, as you can see in the bottom of the sign here, was called Alcan, A-L-C-A-N, and it was a name that stood for Aluminum Canada. This is an aluminum ingot. An ingot is a bar or plate that is a mold like this and is cast for a metal, from a metal like gold or silver or steel or aluminum like this one. The ore that is mined to make aluminum is called bauxite, and it is shipped from areas closer to the equator like China and Australia, Brazil, and Guinea. The bauxite comes to Kitimat in ocean freighters like this one. It is then processed into aluminum and shipped out to countries like Japan, South Korea, and the U.S. Rio Tinto does not offer tours of the plant, and this was about as close as we could get to it. Even more than copper, aluminum, since World War II, became recognized as a symbol of the modern world. Today, of course, aluminum is being replaced with silicone and a number of rare earth elements that are used in things like computers, satellites, lasers, fiber optics, and so on. The plant employs about 1,000 workers. Nichaco Reservoir here is about 80 kilometers away, and the water transfers to the Kamano powerhouse in a single-track tunnel. But a backup tunnel is being built. Over the years, they've had the share of famous visitors. This is the Duke of Edinburgh from Britain, and This guy is no other than John Diefenbaker, Prime Minister of Canada at one time. Where could you house so many workers needed to build a huge industrial plant in an isolated area? Answer: bring in this big ship, house the workers in it, then it and the workers can sail quickly and quietly away when the work is done. This is an abandoned pulp and paper plant, waiting for the pipelines to come, but they haven't come yet. In the heyday of construction, there were plans to make Kitimat a model city of tomorrow. Linked neighborhoods would have open-air malls and covered walkways with all traffic limited to the periphery. Traditional streets would be gone. All industrial services and storage and supplies would be housed across the river and out of the way. Footpaths and overhead walkways would keep pedestrians away from traffic. There would be only short distance walking to schools and shopping centers. Homes and stores would face open spaces with no traffic. Front doors would open onto communal green spaces. Streets and houses were to be arranged to maximize the sun and minimize the wind. It was a dream city indeed, but not to be realized because government failed to make Kitimat into the great seaport it has the potential to become. But it's back to reality now, back to the junction on the Yellowhead Highway at the town of Terrace, where we followed the very picturesque Skeena River into Prince Rupert on the coast, about an hour and a half drive. Prince Rupert is in the center of an interesting area. If you go up the coast, you have to come back on the Yellowhead and go up Highway 37. I call that the shortcut to Alaska. Anyway, you come up 37 and swing over to the coast to the tip of the Alaska Panhandle that comes down here, and you'll see in the fall grizzly bears eating salmon. From a great perspective, and the Salmon Glacier. You can follow it for 40 or 50 kilometers. It's a great view of a glacier. Back from Prince Rupert, if you go across about several hours by boat to Haida Gwaii, the island complex that houses on the south end the famous Canadian National Park, Gwaii-Haanas. This is the rainiest city in Canada. You get, if you can believe it, 20 times more rainfall in Prince Rupert than you do in Vancouver. I'm wearing my sou'wester Newfie rain hat, and my rain suit is waterproof. Like it says here, it is wet pretty well year-round, but not much snowfall, because temperatures usually are warm enough so precipitation falls as rain, not snow. Even these young eagles were rain-soaked, but they're used to it. Prince Rupert is about 750 kilometers or 16 hours boat ride up the coast from Vancouver. Otherwise, you would have to come from Vancouver by road to the Trans-Canada Highway, switch to Highway 97, up to the Yellowhead, and then west into Prince Rupert. Ridley Island is the shipping terminal at Prince Rupert. It is Canada's third largest shipping terminal, behind number 1 Vancouver and number 2 Montreal. The harbor here is ice-free, and is the deepest in North America, and it is also wide enough to have the largest of ocean freighters come in. The deep water comes in very close to shore, so ships need a shorter piloting time into the loading docks, and this is 2 to 6 hours less than in many other shipping ports elsewhere. Prince Rupert is closer to Asia and its markets than any other North American port. For example, shipping times between Shanghai, China, and Prince Rupert is 36 hours less than it is to Vancouver. Also, Prince Rupert is 68 hours closer than Los Angeles to Shanghai. These are some reasons why the movement of goods has increased at the Prince Rupert port over 100% in the past decade. If the trend to decrease U.S. trade and increase trade with Asian countries continues, the importance of Prince Rupert will continue to increase as well. You can see the job numbers at the port. Ridley Island is now under private ownership that includes investment by local indigenous First Nations. The main bulk commodities shipped out of here include things like grain, coal, propane, and pellets. And for items from Asia, many enter the country via this port. The waterfront is a tourist area with small shops and restaurants. The area is called Cow Bay because years ago somebody unloaded a boatload of dairy cows here. This is one of several tourist boats you can take along the coast to watch bears, whales, and terrific mountain coastline scenery. Let's walk through the rainforest. The lush growth is unbelievable. Trees are defined as old forest growth along the coast if they are 250 years old. Determining how much timber to cut is an ongoing controversial debate amongst government, environmentalists, and the timber industry. The extent of government deferrals versus allowing forest harvesting, for example, is complicated. Is the current policy of planting 3 trees for every tree harvested really sufficient? Lack of agreement on the size of the old growth and on the amount of how much is actually logged adds to the confusion and the controversy. We drove over to nearby Buttes Rapids, where you could see the pull of the tides actually reverse the flow of the stream, as it's indicated here with that red arrow. The natural or normal flow of the water is reversed by the strong pull of the tides. The high tides at Prince Rupert are about 2 meters higher than those at Vancouver. So if you are walking across a coastal beach, you had better know when those 6-foot-high tides come in to this area. People have been drowned when the high tide comes in. Tides, of course, are caused by the gravitational pull of the moon, mainly, and to a lesser extent of the sun. This cute little guy is the reason why the white man first came to the Pacific coast. The first Europeans to come were the Spanish. And they were followed by the Russians. And later on, the British came, and finally the Americans came. But in those early days, these colonizing nations were not interested in settling or establishing colonies or settlements. They were after the sea otter pelts, and they sent a lot of them. There was a sale, an export to China, but in the case of Russia, a lot of pelts went there because furs were the in thing, the high society thing. Hats and scarves and coats were made of fur in those days. And the indigenous people were involved in the sea otter trade. They brought the pelts to the European people along the coast who in turn then either used them themselves or took them to China. The indigenous people wanted some of the new foods that the Europeans had, like rice and tea and flour and sugar. And they wanted things made of the copper and iron that they had never had before, various tools. They wanted cloth, they wanted pots, and they were fond of mirrors as well. After the sea otter, fish became the harvest of the sea. Let's go tour the old North Pacific Cannery just outside of Prince Rupert. It is now a National Historic Site. It started in the 1890s and processed salmon for 80 years until the fish were almost completely depleted. As a kid, I remember eating these brands like Cloverleaf and Gold Seal. It just makes you hungry all over again, doesn't it? These are some workers at the fish plant in the old days. The Chinese, Japanese, white, and indigenous workers lived and worked in segregated areas. And here's some of the places where they were at, and they lived there with their families and kids as they worked at the fish plant. New technology increased production, but it eventually decimated the salmon. A new machine called the iron chink, a derogatory reference to Chinese workers who had filleted the fish, now gutted and sliced the fish in moments, adjusting the blades for different sizes of fish. As it says here, this salting machine salted and filled over 65 cans every minute. Salmon reproduction in the sea could not keep up with the new human technology. Today, the salmon are struggling to make a comeback, and the old one-time prosperous fish plant here is basically gone, only to remain as a National Historic Site and still a great place to learn and visit. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. My cameraman, what do you say up there? Oh, a bear story. I promised a bear story. Well, okay, I guess I could tell you something. If you want to, if you're that interested in bears, maybe you should catch your own bear, and then you could watch them all the time. In fact, I'll tell you how to catch a bear. And but it's a bear story, so I better get rid of this sou'wester Newfie hat and put on my my regular hat, because we're talking bears now. We're not talking rain. So how do you catch a bear? Well, you get a shovel and you dig a big hole, maybe a couple of meters wide and a couple of meters deep. Dig that hole, and from your campfire, after a few days of camping, you'll have quite a bit of ashes. So take those ashes over to the hole and drop the ashes down into the bottom of the hole that you dug. Then get some peas. You can get a can of peas, or I like frozen peas. Go to the store, get some frozen peas, and sprinkle those peas around the circumference of the hole that you dug. And then go hide behind a tree and wait for the bear to come. And when the bear comes to take a pee, run up behind him and kick him in the ash hole. Now, Mr. Cameraman, you can watch a bear all the time if you like. You've caught your own. No, get your hand off of that ejection button. No, don't do that. No. I'm okay. The landing was a little rough, but I'm okay. By the way, have you seen that cameraman of mine around yet?